Hey friends, it's Sachin here, and I am super excited because today I have a special guest, Cole Kirschner from AgeRate. He's going to be discussing with us how to calculate your chronological versus biological age using an innovative test that him and professors at McMaster University have developed. In fact, this is a test that I recently had done, and it helped me uncover that I was aging slightly slower than my chronological age, which excited me because it means that a lot of things I'm doing are right. Certainly, I saw room for improvement, and it was something that was quite fascinating. It's cool to see the lifestyle changes that we can make that can help us improve our health span, increase our age. And what I love about this test, it gives us actionable steps that we can do. It coaches us on how we can be healthier and happier and more whole versions of ourselves. As longevity gains a lot of lift and a lot of excitement in the healthcare space, it's wonderful to see innovations such as AgeRate that are hitting the market and making this amazing information accessible to the average person. What used to cost thousands and thousands of dollars, now we can get access to using epigenetic markers from our blood. So without further ado, Cole, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Sasha. It's a pleasure to be here, and that's an amazing overview in terms of what we're working on at AgeRate. And we're excited to chat today about what we're building and how we can help health professionals like yourself unlock the secret to living a longer and healthier life.
Yeah. So for those of you that are listening to the audio version of this, you can't see Cole. Cole's quite young. And so it inspires me to ask the question, how does somebody who's your age, you don't have to divulge your age, but how does somebody your age get involved in something like longevity? What inspired you to do that?
Yeah, great question, Sasha. And yeah, I do appear to be young at the surface level. My chronological age, I'll divulge it. It's 27, but my biological age is actually 29. So that was definitely a wake up call for me when I got my first test done. But yeah, in terms of how we got started at AgeRate, so I was doing my undergraduate degree at McMaster University. It was myself and another student named Nathan. And we really bonded in second year over a passion for fitness, nutrition, Tim Ferriss, biohacking, Dr. Rhonda Patrick. And we were taking our biotechnology degree. And we had this amazing professor at the time, Dr. Guillaume Gray, who runs the genome facility at McMaster. And the three of us really hit it off in terms of our shared passion for consumer health and helping people optimize their health and longevity. So we set out to develop a novel, cost-effective way of measuring epigenetics to reveal biological age. So this was back in 2018. At the time, there weren't really many epigenetic tests that could measure biological age. And what was gaining a lot of popularity was actually telomere length testing. I'm not sure if you remember companies like TeloYears, where you could send in a sample and get your telomere length done. But we found in the lab is that the results for a telomere length test for age, it can be pretty variable. And what was regarded as the gold standard was this epigenetic testing for biological age. It was a lot more robust, accurate way of measuring biological age. But the problem with it is that it was pretty expensive. And because of the high price point, the general thought was that it wouldn't make for a good consumer product. And what we really strived to do was bring the cost down for epigenetic testing to empower the everyday person to reveal their biological age. And the real benefit of knowing your biological age is at the end of the day, you can't manage what you can't measure, right? And we wanted to set out to create this comprehensive metric for someone's overall health. Kind of a missing piece there that we saw was this biological age that could be done accurately and affordably. And that's what we set out to do through our research project at McMaster. So we were pretty ambitious. It took us a few years to get to the point where we're at today, where we currently have an open beta where people can go and get tested, get the results delivered through a mobile app, and we're revealing much more than biological age as well. So we're just starting off, but it's exciting and it's our mission. I mean, what better goal could you set out to try to achieve through your career than helping people live longer and healthier lives?
I love that. For as a fun fact, I went to McMaster as well. And so fellow alumni here, and wonderful school. They've done some amazing research in the healthcare space. So great to see the continued innovation there. Because most people who are listening to this are probably healthcare practitioners, I don't want to belabor this, but perhaps you could tell us what's the difference between epigenetics and genetics, just so we have a working definition.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I would say when it comes to genetics, there's a variety of ways you can get genetic testing done. A lot of amazing companies for sure, for sure, like 23andMe, the DNA company. So genetic testing, it's really measuring what genes you have, like your actual genetic code, genetic code rather, what SNPs have been passed down from your mom and your dad. It's great information for understanding your ancestral background or predisposed health risk. But with genetic testing, it's not modifiable. It's not like a dynamic metric. It's just kind of telling you what you've been passed down from your mom and your dad. But with epigenetics, it's essentially looking at how your genes are actually being used or expressed or changed over time. So one particular, we're measuring DNA methylation, and what it's looking at is essentially how your genes are actually being turned on or off. And it's epigenetics that make a skin cell different from a heart cell, for instance. Those two cells have the same genetic code, the same SNPs, but what makes them different is epigenetics and how those genes are actually being used and expressed. And that's what we're measuring at AgeRate, is how your genes are actually being changed over time. The expression is being changed over time. And as we get older, certain genes become turned on or off as a part of the aging process. And really, that's what we're measuring at AgeRate.
Very cool. So how many different methylation points do you guys look for on the test?
So with the AgeRate panel that we have right now, we look at about 3,500 different sites, DNA methylation sites. And each of those sites, we can determine whether or not it's turned on or off, almost like a switch. And by looking at those DNA methylation sites, we can feed those measurements into predictive algorithms to reveal your true biological age. So how old you are on a biological level. But on top of that, we can also look at up to 20 other health and longevity insights by looking at this epigenetic information.
Wow, very cool. So it sounds so futuristic, right? But here it is right now, available to all of us to get tested and to have access to this information. And what I love about this test is that it's direct to consumer, which for us Canadians isn't always the case for, for lab analysis and blood work and things like that. So tell us, what does that process look like if somebody wanted to get tested, which we'll talk a little bit more about how they can get access to the testing. But what does that process look like? We order the test kit, it gets shipped to our house, and then what happens?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I actually have one of our test kits here for those that are watching the video. So yeah, you go on our website, you order one of the test kits, it's sent right to your house. You simply prick your finger to provide a blood sample and send it back to our lab using prepaid shipping. Once it's at our lab, it undergoes our custom process where we extract your DNA, we do some chemical treatments to it, and then we look at your DNA and see the methylation the methylation levels at these 3,500 different sites, and feed those measurements into our algorithms to reveal biological age, chronic inflammation, metabolic health, immune health, and the quality of your diet. We take that information and we actually give you access to that through a mobile app. So you can log into the app, you can get access to your test results. And also within the app, there are lifestyle challenges that you can try out. And the whole premise is that users will perform follow-up tests to benchmark progress towards achieving their goal of slowing down the aging process.
Pretty cool. And that turnaround time is actually surprisingly very quick. So you guys do a great job with that. And it's great to see that within weeks, we can find out how fast or how slow we're aging. And then we're given, proven processes that can slow that process down for us, which are simple and practical. When I got my results, it showed that I was aging about 3.5 years slower. I'm 44 and it marked my age at right around just a little bit past 40. So I was excited, right, to see that. And I saw that there were some really simple changes that I could make to further optimize. Like one of the things for me was consuming more olive oil. I put olive oil on, I use it in a lot of the foods, not in the foods that I cook, but I drizzle it on my salads. But there was an opportunity for me to consume more of it so I could add it to, other foods or incorporate more of it. Or now I just take it by the tablespoon and just take it directly because we know it activates certain genes like sirtuins. So as you were doing this research, I'm so fascinated and curious. My university experience was powerful, but I wasn't doing such groundbreaking research. So I'm so enamored by you taking kind of this taking this on and running with it. So what were some of the aha moments that you had, or what were some cool discoveries that happened over the last couple of years in doing this work?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was quite the journey for sure. So when we first started off, the actual testing method was a lot different than what we ended up launching with and what we're using today. So without getting into too much of the technical details, what we first set out to do was develop a targeted qPCR or PCR assay. I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with PCR now with COVID testing, right? So we were developing this custom PCR test that could look at different methylation sites, and it wasn't as robust as we needed it to be. And through multiple iterations of that, we eventually landed on this custom chip that essentially measures these few thousand different sites very accurately. And because we have this chip that can look at thousands of sites as opposed to maybe 100, which is what we were first striving to do, it allows us to look at these other scores, we call them, like the chronic inflammation, diet quality, immune health. And I think that was probably the most exciting part of the journey, was being presented this opportunity to look at a few thousand different methylation sites and really looking at all the peer-reviewed studies and the data that's out there, and getting a good understanding in terms of, okay, what can we accurately measure using DNA methylation or epigenetic data, and what new insights or value does it provide to the everyday consumer? So we spent a solid month just diving into the research, PubMed, Google Scholar, just hundreds of papers we were looking at. And we were very happy with the final panel that we ended up developing. And again, we're offering about 5 or 6 different scores to begin with through the beta, but the actual panel that we have has the capability of offering 20 plus scores. And we're excited to begin rolling those out over the course of the next year.
All right. Are you able to go back, let's say hypothetically, to the original test that somebody had? Has that data been collected and it just needs to go into the algorithm? I'm just asking because I'd be curious down the road, as I get, testing done every quarter, if it's able to benchmark from my baseline profile.
Yeah, 100%. And that's part of it, what we're striving to do. So when you provide your test or your sample into the lab, we are measuring those few thousand different methylation sites all at once. It's really a matter of us putting that data into newly developed algorithms. And for sure, similar to other companies like 23andMe, where they'll send you maybe an email and say, hey, some new reports are available. We can do the same and go back, and your historic tests, we can provide you with these new insights with the new algorithms that we're launching.
I love that. So it's a test that actually, has more value over time because you're going to be able to provide this information. Now, since you bring up 23andMe, and I know genetic information can be really sensitive to people, so maybe you can speak to how you keep people's data safe and make sure it doesn't get into the wrong hands.
Yeah, for sure. And it's definitely a top priority, as it should be for any company in this at-home health testing space, without a doubt. So when you send your sample into the lab, it's de-identified. So essentially, you're just a barcode at the end of the day. You're about like 9-digit number. And that's not linked to any personal information like your name or email. So we don't have access to whose test is whose. It's really just a barcode when it goes to that actual lab. And all this, the data that comes from the lab test, it's all encrypted and stored in secured servers that are separate from your personal information. So our CTO, Kevin Peters, comes from an engineering consulting background, and he had a lot of fun building out all the systems to make sure all the data is private and secure. And that's something we're striving to do, is just make sure that everyone has their data de-identified and make sure that it's stored securely.
I'm almost wondering if it would be a good thing for insurance companies to know this information if your results are positive, and you could then share it with them and say, hey, like, check this out. Like, here's how I'm taking care of myself. Here's, epigenetic evidence that I'm eating healthy, moving healthy, sleeping healthy, thinking healthy, all the things that influence gene expression. but maybe we'll save that for a future
Sure.
conversation. But maybe that's something that people have the choice to do at some point, right? To take this to their insurance company, because I know insurance companies come in and they do lab work. Like I just had a life insurance policy written up for me, and they came in and did some blood work, and I went online and they send me a report of what they tested. I'm like, this doesn't tell you anything, right? Like this doesn't tell you,
Yeah.
it just tells you a bunch of numbers, but it doesn't tell you what arrived, what caused me to arrive at those numbers, or it doesn't really give me, opportunities to improve or optimize those numbers. Thankfully, my numbers are really good, but it's just, hopefully this is, something that's widely spread and utilized for decision making, for processes like that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I completely agree. I mean, like the field of epigenetics, it's really new and emerging right now, and there's so many different use cases when it comes to biological age testing to be able to do that accurately. Yeah, there's definitely a use case with insurance, and as you said, if it benefits the consumer and it doesn't, maybe you get a better deal on your premiums as opposed to raising it. I think that would be like very interesting if it provides value to the end user. And yeah, you're right. I mean, like there are a lot of these traditional lab tests and online surveys that are used right now when it comes to insurance. But this technology, epigenetics, it really provides a much more accurate idea in terms of someone's life expectancy, their health span, right? And how other sorts of lifestyle factors are influencing their health and longevity. So, for instance, I know like there's usually like a urine test that measures like a marker called cotinine to determine whether or not you're a smoker. But the problem with that particular sort of marker when it comes to the urine test is that it has a relatively short half-life. So maybe it can look back and see whether you've been smoking within the past 3 months. But with epigenetics, you can look back your whole lifetime and see the cumulative impact in terms of smoking. What does that have on your health and longevity? And that's really the value of epigenetic testing. It can show you this long-term impact of different lifestyle factors, and not just looking back, let's say 3 months when it comes to that particular sort of test. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of really cool possibilities when it comes to being able to measure someone's true biological age and all these different lifestyle factors and how they influence your health and longevity.
One thing that's popping up for me as we're having this conversation is with blood work, you can get blood work done every day for a week or every couple of hours during the course of a day, and you'll get totally different numbers because it's kind of a real-time assessment of what's going on in the body. How much variation is there day to day or hour to hour in these types of tests when we're looking at methylation?
Yeah, that's a good question. So with methylation, it's a relatively stable marker, so you shouldn't be seeing huge fluctuations in the actual test results, but there is an element of technical variation when it comes to the actual test itself, as with any traditional lab test as well. So it's really a matter of deciphering what variation is due to technical variation and what is actually due to true change in someone's health and longevity. And that's really the piece we're striving to focus on, is that change that's due to true changes in health and longevity.
Okay, that's good to know, because sometimes you do a test and you have an off day and the results could be skewed, right? And it's great to know that this is not it's sensitive, but it's not sensitive to day-to-day changes that might take place. Mm-hmm. How often do you suggest somebody getting tested?
Yeah, that's a great question. So really what's kind of gold standard, or what's commonly recommended within the field of epigenetics, is an annual test to measure changes in your biological age. Right now through our beta, we're offering our users the opportunity to get the test on a baseline, and then 3 months later. What we're really striving to do there is get a better idea in terms of what's the best testing window. Like, could we actually see a noticeable change within that 3-month period? And because it's been so expensive to run these sorts of analyses, there really haven't been that many longitudinal studies that can really get a clear answer in terms of, okay, this is like the shortest window for before and after testing to notice a true change, not just technical variation. And that's really what we're striving to better understand through the beta, is what's the ideal testing window. But 1 year is usually recommended when it comes to biological age testing.
Okay, awesome. And then when we talk about biological age and chronological age, perhaps you can, it seems pretty self-explanatory, but maybe you can give us a working definition.
Yeah, for sure. So chronological age, it's the number of candles on your birthday cake, if you want to look at it that way. Yeah, number of trips around the sun. It's how old you are, like traditional way of looking at age. Biological age is really a reflection of how old you appear to be by looking at your cells. So, does your biological makeup represent someone that is 50 years old, 60 years old? It's really looking at these epigenetic markers and seeing if your epigenetic profile matches someone of X age. So, by comparing your biological age to your chronological age, it gives you a really good idea in terms of how well you've been aging across the course of your life.
All right. Sounds like a great birthday gift for somebody.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, I think that would make for some really cool marketing material. Send them a birthday card too with their biological age. Yeah, I can definitely see that for sure.
um, so I know there's certain things that I'm sure we could give as general guidelines to help people slow down the aging process. So I'd love, for perhaps you to share what are some of those things? Like, what are the top 3 to 5 things that you would recommend to somebody who's listening to this right now, who I hope takes that next step and orders this test kit? But in the meantime, what can they do to slow down the aging process? What has your research found?
Yeah, so I think that the field is still new and emerging right now when it comes to what specific interventions can slow down aging. And I think that's really the value of the test, is that we're now going to be able to have this way to quantify improvements in the aging process. But that being said, in terms of like the current state of the literature, I think there's been a lot of really good research that has gone into intermittent fasting as one protocol that you can take to help you enhance health and longevity. Mediterranean diet as well. So eating foods that are rich in olive oil, as you mentioned, fish, lots of fruits and vegetables. Mediterranean diet is definitely something that's linked to longer lifespan and slowing down aging. And exercise is obviously good as well. Now, in terms of what sort of exercise, I think be really interesting to see, like, if, let's say, like a HIIT training protocol was different than like a steady state for cardio, for instance, in terms of its benefits for longevity. But I think that over the next few years, we're going to start to get a lot of really good answers in terms of what specific sort of interventions are having X impact on health span and longevity. But those would be my 3. And then I would have to say sleep as well. So sleep is linked to longevity and mitochondrial health as well, actually. So that's one of the other panels that we're developing in the lab. And there's a clear link there between the quantity of sleep and the quality of sleep that you get, and enhanced mitochondrial health. And overall mental well-being, that would probably be my 5th one. So making sure that you are taking the time to decompress, anti-stress protocols, whether that's meditation, going for a walk. I think that having less stress is good when it comes to longevity and aging. So as a roundup, I would say intermittent fasting, Mediterranean diet, exercise, sleep quality, and anti-stress routines. Those would be like my 5 that I would say. And I'm starting to implement some of those into my own life as well. I started with intermittent fasting, and it's going to be interesting to see how it impacts my test results when I do my follow-up.
All right. Now you listed some things that, I try to do on a daily basis. So good to know I'm in good company here. What are some things that accelerate aging besides the obvious, like smoking? Were there any things that in your research kind of shocked you that accelerated the aging process?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So for sure, smoking, heavy alcohol consumption, those play a role. There's been some interesting research about like stress and childhood stress, and how that actually leaves lasting marks on your epigenetics. And although that's not something that you can necessarily go back and change, I think it's interesting to be aware of in terms of the overall impact that stress can have on the aging process. I think another interesting one too, there's been a lot of interesting research about air pollution, believe it or not, and how that actually impacts certain epigenetic marks. So that's interesting. But in terms of things that you can quantify, I think that focusing on unhealthy habits like smoking, alcohol consumption, unhealthy foods. Those are the things that you definitely got to eliminate right off the bat. And those are linked to accelerated aging.
Thank you for that. Have you looked at, by any chance, pre and post COVID on the aging process? Like somebody who didn't have COVID, got COVID, and then got retested. Have you seen any pre and post tests come in?
No, we haven't seen any of that yet internally, and I think that there's starting to be some interesting research about that. I believe Morgan Levine published a paper using one of her biological age clocks and COVID. But yeah, I think it'd be really interesting to see like the impacts that pre and post COVID have on aging and these epigenetic markers for sure.
Well, when you get my results back, we'll be able to see when I get my second test if that had an impact. And I guess it would be hard to say specifically on what part of the epigenetic expression, but I always curious because I know that this is whether it's from getting COVID itself or being impacted from all the trauma that's associated surrounding this virus. Whether it's lives that were lost, jobs that were lost, economic hardship that was created, the mental health crisis that was created through this process. It'll be interesting to see what happens to people's, chronological versus biological ages with the amount of stress that we're all under these days. And I know that, this pandemic affects all of us in different ways. Some of us are more closely impacted or more powerfully impacted than others, but certainly it's affecting our epigenetics. And I'm curious at some point if once the dust settles, if we can see it affects people's how healthy people age or not.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, I think that would be really interesting to see, because when you first asked that question, I was thinking of it like almost like an N of one like context, like someone that has had COVID like pre and post. But I think like the overall effect of the pandemic in terms of people's like economically and also like the stress and well-being of folks, it'd be really interesting if there were data sets like pre-pandemic, and there is data sets out there like that, and then looking at a data set post-pandemic and seeing if it has impacted any of these stress-related markers too. That would be very fascinating.
Yeah, I know. Like I was reading this article, and the numbers escape me, but people between the age of 20 and 40 gained an average of 28 pounds, which is shocking. In 2 years, that's a significant amount of weight as an average, which means some people didn't gain any, and some people gained, twice as much as that, or even more than that. And we know that impacts chronic inflammation in the body. So yeah, let's see what happens over the next few months and years as you guys start processing all this data to see if we can potentially even correlate it back to that.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think it definitely highlights a need for services like AgeRate and services like what you're offering, Sachin, through your own clinic in terms of helping people improve their health and longevity. There's obviously been there's been a spotlight in terms of like the importance of people focusing on their health and following healthy lifestyles throughout the pandemic. And now more than ever, there needs services like this to help people and give them the tools to understand how well they're doing and provide them with the support to help them improve.
Yeah, this is awesome. I love what you guys are up to. I love what the reports look like. You sent me a beautiful PDF. I don't know if that's the norm or if you just did that for a handful of clients, but the PDF looks beautiful. So it's just a nice report for the consumer to receive. The app is awesome. It gives you some great, simple, practical challenges that are very easy to implement. It's stuff that most of us already have the equipment, right? We have the oils at home. We have the ability to work out. We have the ability to fast. So it's simple, strategic things that people can do. And you also look at diet quality, which I thought was really cool. So can you talk about that specifically? Like, how do you measure the quality of somebody's diet? What are you looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with the diet quality score, it's based off of a peer-reviewed study that found that following a Mediterranean diet and an overall healthy diet left actual marks and changes in certain epigenetic sites. And people that followed like a Mediterranean diet, let's say, and they had this certain switch in their epigenetics, it conferred a positive impact in terms of lower risk for disease and all-cause mortality. So we essentially developed a score there that can look at those genes that are usually flipped when people are following like a Mediterranean diet or a healthy diet. And we were actually measuring that through that particular sort of test. So we can see if someone's following overall like a very healthy diet full of healthy fats and fish and vegetables, and whether or not it's actually leaving an impact on these certain genes. And by impacting these genes, it confers a positive impact in terms of lower risk for disease and all-cause mortality.
Cool. Have you seen any trends in vegans, vegetarians, pescatarians, carnivores? Have you seen any? I don't know if you have enough data yet, but have you seen any trends in those populations?
Yeah, without a doubt. And so it's a very small sample size, so definitely can't come to many conclusions right now. But with vegans, we've actually found that they have a lower health, like a diet score, which was very surprising for us. So we've had about 3 or 4 vegetarians or vegans that have gotten tested, and all of them ranked lower for the diet quality score. So I think it's a very interesting finding. It was surprising to us to see that. Potentially it's due to inadequate amounts of healthy fats. That could be it. Maybe something to do with protein. We're not necessarily sure. But I think it's something that would be interesting to do a bigger study to look at, let's say, vegans versus people that are just following a traditional sort of diet, and see whether or not there's something to that, or if it's just is the case for these few folks that we have gotten tested that are vegans or vegetarians.
Yeah, I wonder if it's the deficiency of amino acids and methyl donors from the B vitamins that it might not be getting. So
yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, with that, that's something that didn't cross my mind either. The deficiency of B vitamins through obviously meat, right? That could definitely play a role in terms of the methylation profile. So I think it definitely warrants further study. It's an interesting finding, but I'm excited to kind of dive a little bit deeper into that as we continue to grow and get more users. So if you're a vegan or vegetarian out there that wants to get tested, we'd love to have you join, and we can get to the bottom of that.
Awesome. So Cole, how can people get tested? We've created a compelling argument for people to at least discover what their biological age is. What are the next steps if they want to do that?
Yeah, for sure. So anyone can go on our website right now and apply to our beta. We're accepting 200 users as a part of the beta. There's an application process, but if you're listening to Sachin's podcast, as you are, if you're hearing my voice right now, then you can go to age-rate.com/baseline. And that'll give you, that's a link to get direct access to the beta. And you can use the promo code Sachin at checkout and you get an exclusive offer in terms of joining the beta. The baseline, you'll get the biological age test plus the other health scores, chronic inflammation, metabolic health, immune health, and diet quality, all delivered through the mobile app.
Beautiful. Thank you. I appreciate that offer. It's our community members. So grateful for that. Now, before we wrap things up, I know there's other tests that are out there that, have made an attempt to measure, different facets of aging. So perhaps you could speak to how the AgeRate test is different and unique compared to those.
Yeah, without a doubt. So there are a few great companies out there that are using epigenetics to reveal biological age. What separates AgeRate from most of those companies is that we're looking at these other health and longevity scores, so chronic inflammation, metabolic health, etc. That gives people a better idea in terms of why they might be aging faster or slower than normal. And we also deliver that through a mobile app. So our users can log into the app, and the app links up with wearable devices as well. So you can display your step count, sleep within there, and receive those lifestyle challenges. So really what we're trying to focus on is making a comprehensive test for health and longevity, and pairing that with a great experience when it comes to actually receiving the test results and the hands-on support that everyone needs to help them improve.
Amazing. Well, there you have it, folks. Cole Kirschner from AgeRate. Thank you, Cole, for joining me today. Thanks for shedding light on this very important topic. I mean, who doesn't want to live longer? Who doesn't want to live healthier? Who doesn't want to help their parents or their spouse or their patients, their children live a long, healthy, happy life? And this is a great way for us to, kind of eavesdrop on our cells and understand what their needs are and make the necessary lifestyle changes. I know many of us listening to this are probably taking extra steps when it comes to staying healthy. However, there were some interesting things that I found out on my test that helped me dive a little bit deeper or lean into things that I was already doing, but just do it with more self-awareness. So thank you, Cole. Greatly appreciate the work that you're doing. Everyone go to age-rate.com/baseline and type in Sachin at checkout, and you'll get a very special offer and some additional bonuses for being part of our community. Thank you for tuning in today. Here's to your health, happiness, and longevity.